So like and subscribe if you want to. This James Harden Nets thing is becoming a thing. There has not been specific trade talk between the Nets and the Rockets about Harden, but Harden has made it known that if he was going to get moved, then he would be okay with the Nets. I don't know how much power Harden would have in a deal. Would it be a matter of the only teams who should be looking to acquire him would be teams on his list? I mean, I guess if Harden was going to get moved, it would probably be this trade deadline, maybe a little bit before it. To me, Harden will at least be on the Rockets to start the regular season. Maybe I'm being too optimistic with that one, but I just feel like he wants to do that. I feel like if Harden wanted out, we would know it by now. We might find it out by next week, but it just seems like he wants to be there for right now. In the case of Westbrook, that might be a little different. And we'll have to see if the Rockets end up getting a good return for Westbrook, if they're able to move him at all, if they even try to move him, or they just say, screw it, we have Westbrook and Harden, let's just run it back and hope for the best, especially if they can shore up something in free agency as well. But anyway, back to the idea of how much would Harden control his own destiny. So let's say we get to the deadline, which again, could be wrong, but that's just where I think this is going to go for a Harden deal. Then at that point, Harden would have a season and a half left on his contract. Or not even really a half, because the deadline usually comes after the halfway point, whatever. So then the team that would be acquiring Harden would not have too much time to convince him to stay. So unless they were already decently stacked even after trading for Harden, it could be kind of tough to build the team necessary to convince Harden that he's going to be on a title contender on his next extension. So you just look around the league, like who has enough talent to give the Rockets a real offer for Harden while still being good enough after they get Harden? Brooklyn, certainly one of them, because it'd be KD, Kyrie, Harden, and it might be kind of tough to fill out the rest of the roster, especially because you assume they would have to move LeVert, Dinwiddie, Jared Allen. The Nets have all their picks moving forward, which is pretty crazy, but we've finally reached that point with this team. But anyway, yeah, they would probably have enough. Now, if the Sixers are willing to put in Embiid or Simmons for Harden, then I would assume they have the best offer. The question is just, would Daryl Morey do it? Would a team like Phoenix talk themselves into a Harden move? I mean, Harden and Chris Paul could get awkward, but you'd probably do it. Maybe you'd have to move CP in the deal. It would certainly make the money match. I'm assuming Chris Paul's already on Phoenix. That move has not happened yet, although it seems like it's going to. Would the Suns offer DeAndre Ayton for Harden? Yeah, I would. And then you're rolling with Devin Booker and James Harden, and, offensively speaking, you're really, really good with those two. I think another thing that would be interesting if Harden becomes available, and it's not just the Nets who have the chance of trading for him, is that there's a lot of teams who have made it pretty obvious that they are holding out cap space for next free agency. Would they be willing to go against that to trade for Harden? I guess one thing to point out is that by the time Harden is moved, unless he's moved within the next couple of weeks, but again, I think it's going to go to the deadline, is Giannis may have signed his extension by then. We're going to get some more intel about Kawhi and PG if one of them are going to get moved. And LeBron, we assume, is just going to stay with the Lakers. At that point, you could see a team like Dallas be like, well, screw it. You guys want Porzingis for Harden? Now, you could argue that because a team would be working up against the clock, as in Harden declining his player option, to build a team around him, you could say that his market might take a slight hit if he really becomes available. At the same time, it's James Harden. You could argue that he could have 5 minutes left on his contract and his market would still be massive. But we do have to remember, Harden is still on the Rockets, and the Rockets still have a chance to be something this season. I don't think they're title contenders, and you could argue they're not even the fourth best team in the West, but he is still on the Rockets as of right now, and you don't know. They could snake their way into some sort of move where some team likes Gordon or Covington or Tucker's contracts, or they could get a pick and then flip that pick for something. There's always a possibility. Of course, they don't have Daryl Morey running the show anymore, so the chances of that might not be as high, but there might still be like a little glimmer of light in which the Harden-Houston situation can be cool. There's also a chance Westbrook doesn't get moved and it's Harden and Westbrook next season and they surprise some people. Again, I'm just trying to be optimistic here. So yeah, we'll see. But again, it is interesting, or it's going to be interesting to see just the power that Harden has with a move. Because there's a chance that he only names a couple teams and nobody else has a real chance. It would be similar to the Anthony Davis situation. And, based on this, if you were going to throw any team into that, it would be Brooklyn so far. Now I'm trying to think of any other team that could be a non-Brooklyn destination for Harden. I would say the Clippers, but the draft pick situation makes it really tough. I think for Miami to be real players, they would need Tyler Hero to be dropping 20 points a game next season or something. Do we think the Warriors have a shot at Harden? I mean, they could move. I mean, if the guy they end up picking a number 2, if they keep number 2, if that guy ends up being good, and then you give the Rockets the Minnesota pick, you need Wiggins to be playing well, and that would be tough, but maybe they transform Wiggins. I don't know. You could easily say that Wiggins would regress back to mediocre if he was the savior of the Houston Rockets, but I don't know. Crazier things have happened. Would Denver include Michael Porter Jr.? You have to assume so, but MPJ would have to show off a lot this season for that to be real. And again, this is all just me assuming that a Harden move would happen at minimum at the deadline. I can't picture it happening this offseason. But perhaps it could. Would I be shocked if 3 days from now I saw James Harden requests a trade from Houston? No. I wonder if the Wolves would just call up the Rockets and be like, all right, we'll give you number 1 and stuff besides Karl Anthony Towns for James Harden. Would Houston take it? I don't know. Probably not in this draft. Maybe if it was like a Zion draft. Speaking of Zion, not him specifically, but would the Pelicans do some Brandon Ingram plus a bunch of picks for Harden? I think you would need one other young guy on the Pelicans to really take off a bit, whether it be Lonzo or, well, probably Lonzo. Could my Celtics jump in on Harden? If they included Jalen, they might have a shot. They're not going to include Tatum, and they don't have another young guy who the Rockets would really want, unless Romeo Langford becomes awesome. But yeah, for the sake of the Nets, I mean, the move's there. From their perspective, whether Houston would get a better offer, we'd have to see, but Dinwiddie, LeVert, Jared Allen, Roddy Karooks, John Musa if you want, the whole bunch of picks, Kyrie, KD, and Harden score 100 points a half. So we'll just see. We'll see if Harden wants to be there. We'll see if he gets into the regular season with the Rockets. We'll see if the Rockets end up surprising people and hold on to everybody.